Judges chapter 20. This is my first time going live on YouTube. Normally it's on Facebook. So I'm not even 100% sure if this is going the way I want it to. It says I'm live, so I assume I'm live. I'm not sure if how I can talk to you guys or not. But anyways, let's just get started. Last week we were in Judges chapter 19. That was the Levite and his concubine. It was a very sad chapter. She was abused by multiple men, and ultimately she passed away. And the Levite come out and seen her, and he didn't drop down and are you okay? He didn't say anything like that. He bent down, he got her, threw her up on his shoulder, and then they left. And he went home, cut her into 12 pieces, and sent her all throughout Israel. So chapter 20, what we're going to be covering tonight is all of those tribes received a piece of her, and now we're about to see what's happened. So we're going to start out by reading verses 1 and 2. Chapter 20, I'm reading out of an ESV, verses 1 and 2. It says, "Then all the people of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah. And the chiefs of all the people, of all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of what the people of God, 400,000 men on foot that drew the sword." Notice the unity here. It says, "Then all the people of Israel came out and assembled as one man." The nation Israel that has been divided throughout Judges suddenly comes together as one man. The phrase "from Dan to Beersheba," what that means is the entire nation of Israel. See, Dan was at the base of Mount Hermon, which is far north, and Beersheba, it was located at the edge of the Negev desert, far south. In between those 2 points is roughly 150 miles. It also says 400,000 men on foot that drew the sword. This is the largest united army that we've seen in Judges, period. It's interesting to me that Israel couldn't unite to drive out the Canaanites back when it was God's plan to drive out the Canaanites. They couldn't do it, but they unite when one of their own committed this evil. Now they come together. Let's read verses 3 through 7. It says, "Now the people of Benjamin heard that the people of Israel had gone up to Mizpah." Now I'm going to jump in right here. The people of Benjamin. The people of Benjamin, that is the people that abused the girl, the concubine. Okay, they're the men that was outside that abused her. Now the people of Benjamin heard that the people of Israel had gone up to Mizpah, and the people of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this evil happen?" And the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, "I came to Gibeah that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine, to spend the night. And the leaders of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house against me by night. They meant to kill me, and they violated my concubine, and she is dead. So I took hold of my concubine and cut her into pieces and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Israel, for they have committed abomination and outrage in Israel. Behold, you people of Israel, all of you, give your advice and counsel here." Pay attention to what the Levite says here, okay? He tells the truth, but not the whole truth. Now, you was with me last week. You know the truth. You know what happened. He says, "The men of Gibeah rose against me." That's true. They did. He says, "They intended to kill me." Maybe. I mean, that's possibly true. I don't know if that was their intentions. They wanted to abuse him, but possibly kill him. He says, they abused my concubine until she died. This is also true. But he never says, I pushed her outside to save myself. That detail is missing. Now, don't get me wrong. This doesn't excuse the men of Gibeah. They're still guilty. But it reminds us that people often tell stories in ways that make themselves look a lot better. And that's something we're going to come back to as we continue to go through this chapter. But for now, let's continue on. We're going to read through verses 8 through 13. Beginning in 8, and it says, and all the people arose as one man in unity. They were in agreement. And all the people arose as one man, saying, none of us will go to his tent, and none of us will return to his house. But now this is what we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. By lot. What that means is they in the ancient world back then, they would cast lots, basically. And the result would be God's answer. Okay? So drawing the short straw. God, what do you want us to do? You want us to go in from the left? Draw the short straw, going in from the left. Want us to go in from the right? Whatever. They cast lots. That's what they did. Let's continue on. It says, I'm going to reread starting in 9. But now this is what we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot, however that comes out. And we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel. That's 10%. And 100 of 1,000. That's still 10%. And 1,000 of 10,000. Still 10%. To bring provisions for the people, that when they come, they may repay Gibeah of Benjamin for all the outrage they have committed in Israel. So all the men of Israel gathered against the city, united as one man. And the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribes of Benjamin, saying, what evil is this that has taken among you? Now therefore give up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and purge evil from Israel. But the Benjamites would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the people of Israel. Notice that they don't immediately go to war. Their first request seems reasonable. They asked the tribe of Benjamin to hand over the worthless fellows, the wicked men that done that to the concubine. Give them to us. And this follows the principle found in the law. If you remember, I don't know if you do or not, so that's what I'm here for. Back in the book of Deuteronomy, Moses specifically repeats the command to purge the evil from Israel. It says, 21:21, so you shall purge the evil from your midst. That's Deuteronomy 21:21. So Israel, they're not trying to destroy Benjamin. They're just trying to remove the evil. They're trying to purge the evil. Everybody didn't do this. Just those guys. You understand? Those guys did this. Listen, God's people should never ignore sin. But neither should discipline begin without first seeking justice. And what I mean is you shouldn't punish someone or impose any type of consequences for a mistake until you know the whole truth. Ensure there's fairness. Understand the why this took place. Let's read 14 through 17. It says, then the people of Benjamin came together of the cities to Gibeah to go out to battle against the people of Israel. To battle against the people of Israel. And the people of Benjamin mustered out of their cities on that day 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who mustered 700 chosen men. Among all these were 700 chosen men who were left-handed. Every one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. And the men of Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All these were men of war. Instead of surrendering the guilty men, Benjamin chose to defend them and fight. Do you believe that? They know what happened. These guys just brutally abused this woman until she died. And Israel, the tribes are saying, give these men to us. We're going to kill them because they're evil. And Benjamin's going, no, we're defending them and we're going to fight you guys for them. This is where the tragedy starts to expand. One city sin, Gibeah, it becomes one tribe's sin. You see, when you defend that sin, you're involved with that sin. It looks like Benjamin loved their tribe more than they loved God's holiness. And that's always dangerous. Whenever loyalty to family, friends, church, loyalty to a political party, or in this case, a tribe, loyalty to a tribe. When it becomes greater than loyalty to God's truth, then disaster is going to follow. Listen to that one more time, okay? Whenever loyalty to family, friends, church, when your loyalty to church becomes greater than your loyalty to God's truth, then disaster is going to follow. You know what I'm saying? Think about that. This is going to speak to a lot of people in a lot of different ways. Let's read 18 through 21. The people of Israel arose and went up to Bethel and inquired of God, who shall go up first for us to fight against the people of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up first. Then the people of Israel rose in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to fight against Benjamin. And the men of Israel drew up the battle line against them at Gibeah. The people of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and destroyed on that day 22,000 men of the Israelites. Notice something surprising here. Israel asked God who goes first, and God says Judah. So they attack, and 22,000 Israelites die. Everyone expects an immediate victory, but instead, God allows them to get defeated. Now, why would God send them into battle and allow them to lose? This is getting good. Why would God send them into battle? He told them to go. Why would he do that and allow them to lose? It's possible to be on the right side of an issue. Them guys are wrong. Israel's, they're right. They're trying to purge the evil. So it's possible to be on the right side of an issue and still approach it with the wrong heart. Israel wanted justice. Chapter 20 is teaching us that even when confronting evil, we must depend completely on God. I also want to point out something as we continue through Judges 20 is watch how often the nation seeks God, okay? Watch what they ask him and how their questions start to change as we continue to go through this. This progression is one of the key lessons that I got out of this chapter. Let's read these next two verses, 22 and 23. It says, but the people, the men of Israel, took courage and again formed the battle line in the same place where they had formed it on the first day. And the people of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until the evening. And they inquired of the Lord, shall we again draw near to fight against our brothers, the people of Benjamin? And the Lord said, go up against them. Notice what happens. After losing 22,000 men, this is one of the main reasons for reading scripture, studying scripture, okay? We have to take our time and meditate on each word. What's God trying to show me? When we're reading this, what is God trying to show me in this? The people are discouraged and they weep before the Lord. They just got their tails whipped. And what do they ask? In the middle of 23, verse 23, shall we again draw near to fight against our brothers, the people of Israel, or the people of Benjamin? Notice what they didn't ask. Better yet, if God said to go and you went and you got your tail, well, what would you ask? Would you say, do we go again? I'll tell you what I'm going to say, why'd I lose? That's the first thing I want to know. Why'd I lose? The second one is, did I sin? Did I do something wrong? Why'd you let me lose, God? You told me to go. Should we even be fighting God? No, they simply ask, should we try again? And it's like God says, go ahead. You ain't getting it, brother. Go ahead. Maybe this time they'll knock some sense into you. So they go again. They obey. Sometimes I think we ask God only the questions that we want answered. Instead of asking the Lord, instead of saying, Lord, what are you trying to teach me? You just lost. Lord, why did I lose? What are you trying to teach me? What are you trying to show me? We ask, should I keep doing what I already planned on doing? I already planned on going to war. Should I keep doing this? God's often doing deeper work than we realize. And that's a fact that Judges has been teaching this since we've started teaching the book of Judges over 6 months ago. We've been in this book, just the book of Judges, over 6 months, chapter by chapter, digging deep and trying to understand it. And we have learned most of the time when things don't go to plan, God's doing something deeper. Let's keep reading. Verses 24 and 25, it says, so the people of Israel came near against the people of Benjamin the second day. And Benjamin went against them out of Gibeah the second day and destroyed 18,000 men of the people of Israel. All these were men who drew the sword. Benjamin whoops Israel's tails again. This time, another 18,000 men die. So that's 2 battles. 40,000 Israelites have died. Can you imagine the confusion that's going on the battlefield right now? Lord, we're fighting against evil. We're fighting the guys that done this to this woman. We're purging the evil. Why do we keep losing? Can you imagine how confused? This is where most of us would quit trusting God. But notice Israel doesn't. Praise his holy name. Let's read the next 3 verses, 26, 27, and 28. It says, then all the people of Israel, the whole army, went up and came to Bethel and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And the people of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, ministered before it in those days, saying, shall we go out once more to battle against our brothers, the people of Benjamin, or shall we cease? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand. Does that give you chills? This time, they don't just go and ask God for a battle plan. They go to Bethel, which means house of God. This is where the Ark of the Covenant was at that time, and it's representing God's presence among his people. It's also where Phinehas, the grandson of Aaron, was serving. as high priest. Instead of assuming victory, they came to a place where God had chosen to be worshiped. Okay, they're starting to do what they're supposed to do. They went where God chose to be worshiped. And look what they do. So they go to Bethel, they sit before the Lord, they weep, they fast until evening, they offer burnt offerings, they offer peace offerings, and then they inquire of the Lord. Now, this is a lot different than before. Earlier in the chapter, they just asked, who should go first? What? Who should go first and fight? I mean, you have done nothing. And then later, after losing, should we go up again? It's literally what they said. Do we try again? And God said, yeah, because you're not understanding. All right. So they assumed that they were right just because Benjamin's sin was obvious. And we can agree that was obviously wrong. They wanted God's approval of their plan, but they never stopped to humble themselves before him. They never stopped to understand God's plan. Now everything changes. The burnt offerings, that would have symbolized complete surrender to God. The peace offering would have symbolized restored fellowship with God. In other words, Israel is not just asking for victory anymore. They're worshiping. They're humbling themselves. They're acknowledging their dependence on God. They have finally realized that even when you're on the right side of an issue, you still need a right heart before God. Just because you're right doesn't make you right. Do you understand? Now, I think that that's one of the biggest lessons in this chapter. Sometimes we can become so focused on someone else's sin that we forget to examine our own hearts. We hear about this in the New Testament with the speck in your eye. Before you get the speck out of your brother's eye, get the log out of your own eye. We can be right about the issue, but wrong with our attitude. God cared about Benjamin's sin. Don't get me wrong about that. He cared about Benjamin's sin, but before he dealt with that, he first needed to deal with Israel. And it was only after they humbled themselves and sought his presence and worshiped him and surrendered to him, did God say in verse 28, go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand. Before God gave Israel victory over Benjamin, he first brought Israel to humility. And that's how God works today. Before he changes our circumstances, you may be in a situation right now and he's leaving you there on purpose, waiting for your heart to change. He wasn't teaching Israel how to win a battle. He was teaching them how to defend, how to depend on him. Sometimes God allows painful defeats so that we'll stop trusting ourselves and start trusting in him completely. Let's read 29 through 36. It says, so Israel set men in ambush around Gibeah, and the people of Israel went up against the people of Benjamin on the third day and set themselves in array against Gibeah, as at other times. And the people of Benjamin went out against the people and were drawn away from the city. And as at other times, they began to strike and kill some of the people in the highways, one of which goes up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah and in the open country, about 30 men of Israel. And the people of Benjamin said, they are routed before us as at the first, meaning they're doing the same thing they did the first time. But the people of Israel said, let us flee and draw them away from the city to the highways. And the men of Israel rose up out of their place and set themselves in array at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel who were in ambush rushed out of their place from Merageba. And there came against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men out of Israel. And the battle was hard. But the Benjamites did not know that disaster was close upon them. And the Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel. And the people of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day. All these were men who drawed the sword. So the people of Benjamin saw that they were defeated. The men of Israel gave ground to Benjamin because they trusted the men in ambush whom they had set against Gibeah. This strategy, it should have sounded familiar. Israel sent men in ambush around Gibeah, and the people of Israel went up against Benjamin on the third day, and they set themselves in array against Benjamin. They were surrounding the city. They drove them out of the city, but then they were behind it and in front of it and over towards Bethel. A lot like the strategy that God gave Joshua against Ai in Joshua chapter 8. Benjamin comes out confident. They already beat Israel twice. I mean, I'm sure they assumed that the third time wasn't going to be any different. However, their confidence actually becomes their downfall. Success, they've won twice. Success can produce pride, and that's what happened to Benjamin right here. Benjamin had confused previous victories with God's approval. They assumed they had God's favor because they were winning against Israel. They assumed Israel was in the wrong. But just because you've been winning doesn't mean God approves of everything you're doing. And just because you're losing doesn't mean that God has abandoned you. Now, for the turning point, let's read 37 through 41. It says, Then the men in ambush hurried and rushed against Gibeah. The men in ambush moved out and struck all the city with the edge of the sword. Now, the appointed signal between the men of Israel and the men in the main ambush was that when they had made a great cloud of smoke rise up out of the city, the men of Israel should turn in battle. Now, Benjamin had begun to strike and kill about 30 men of Israel. They said, Surely they are defeated before us, as in the first battle, referring to the first time they fought. But when the signal began to rise out of the city in a column of smoke, the Benjamites looked behind them, and behold, the whole of the city went up in smoke to heaven. Then the men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were dismayed, for they saw that disaster was close upon them. The ambush enters Gibeah and sets the city on fire. Israel, they retreat into the streets. They pulled Benjamin out of the city. They pretend to retreat. And Benjamin chases them out of the city. And then Benjamin looks back and sees their city burning. Suddenly they realize, oh boy, we've been trapped. Verse 41 says the men of Benjamin was dismayed. Dismayed means to feel shocked, disappointed, or discouraged by something unpleasant and unexpected. The battle has completely turned. Let's finish up this chapter. 42 through 48, verses 42 through 48, Benjamin is destroyed. The tribe of Benjamin. Therefore, they turned their backs before the men of Israel in the direction that is Benjamin, turned their backs before the men of Israel in the direction of the wilderness, but the battle overtook them. And those who came out of the cities were destroying them in their midst. Surrounding the Benjamites, they pursued them and trod them down from Norah as far as opposite Gibeah on the east. 18,000 men of Benjamin fell, all of them men of valor. And they turned and fled towards the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. 5,000 men of them were cut down in the highways, and they were pursued hard to Gibeon. And 2,000 men of them were struck down. So all who fell that day of Benjamin were 25,000 men who drew the sword, all of them men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled towards the wilderness to the rocks of Rimmon, and remained at the rocks of Rimmon 4 months. And the men of Israel turned back against the people of Benjamin and struck them with the edge of the sword, the city, men and beasts, and all that they found, and all the towns that they found, they set on fire. Now the tragedy reaches its climax. Israel defeats Benjamin. Verse 46 says 25,000 Benjamite soldiers die. That's a rounded number. The exact number is actually told back over here in verse 35. It's 25,100. And the cities are burned. Women and children are killed. Only 600 men escape to a rock of Rimmon. One tribe is nearly wiped completely off the map. Think about this. The Civil War started because of these worthless fellows, these wicked men that done these things to this Levite's concubine. And now an entire tribe has just almost been destroyed. The chapter's full of irony. Benjamin, they could have just surrendered a handful of guilty men, but instead they defended this wickedness. Thousands died when only a handful had to. Only a handful did anything wrong until they defended that handful, and then they all did something wrong, and they all died. Listen to the lesson here. When sin is protected, when sin is hidden, excused, or defended, its consequences spread far beyond the original offense. What could have been dealt with early eventually affects everybody. Notice something else. Israel finally wins, but I don't see anyone celebrating. This is not one of those awesome victories that we read about back with Gideon or Deborah. This is a heartbreaking win. You know, even Benjamin is still part of the tribes, the 12 tribes. This is brothers having to kill brothers. Cities are destroyed. Justice was necessary. They brutally abused this woman. There had to be consequences for that. But sin had already been done. Sin had already done enormous damage. Even when forgiveness is available, sin still leaves scars. You understand that? Even when forgiveness is available, sin still leaves scars. God forgives, but consequences often remain. The last few chapters of Judges it's preparing us for something. The repeated statement is that there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Do you understand that statement? There was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Without godly leadership, there was no king in Israel. Without godly leadership, without submission to God's word, without obedience, chaos follows. Not just personal chaos, national chaos. This for the tribe. Look at America today. Next week, we're going to be studying one of the saddest endings in the Bible. Israel has won the war, but now they're filled with regret. And they're going to try and solve one problem by creating another, proving once again that when people rely on human wisdom instead of God's, they only deepen the tragedy. Excuse me. Judges 21 ends exactly as the whole book has been teaching. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Thank you guys for watching me tonight, and we will be back to pick up on chapter 21 that ends the book of Judges. We'll be done with the book of Judges next week, 9 p.m. Good night.